The last slide we have in the presentation really is to take time, the majority of our time tonight is to look at the revisions to Policy 832. We have been, again, gathering, listening to feedback, and then hopefully everyone has had a chance to review the current version of 832. Good? That's probably good.
I think he's looking.
It's good right there.
Yeah, I think that's good. So again, if we want to take a moment, we're not going to read it, but to look over the purpose. You can see even the name change here is an every student policy, which aligns with the mission of this district. And then really, how does this help us to truly focus on learning for every student every day? An environment where you come into a place to learn and you feel really confident and comfortable with your surroundings, right? That's where you learn the best. When you're with people that you're comfortable with, other people see you for who you are and appreciate those differences, and you feel comfortable in expressing yourself in a way that says, I don't get this, I'm afraid to raise my hand because I don't want to ask a stupid question. That happens in classrooms. I don't want to say something that offends somebody, so I have to watch what I say. So it's just helping to develop that environment where learning thrives, and that's the purpose of this policy.
So that's a great place to start. May I then?
Please.
Let's because for me, unless we get alignment on the purpose, everything else is futile, right? So, in a valiant effort with this revision, I had to hold up the old one to the new one to see if I thought it was significant enough of a change to warrant a do-over,
Mm-hmm.
right? Versus starting with a third read, right? I don't know where I fall on that right now, personally, but the purpose is what bothers me still. The problem I have with the original version and this version is the use of the word equity. So if what you just said, Mike, is truly the purpose, then it would say that, and it doesn't. And I contrast that to a diversity and inclusion policy where I work. The purpose of that policy is to foster respectful, and I'll substitute some words to be more relevant to education. Foster respectful learning environments, free of harassment and discrimination for every student. That essentially states what you just said. If that was the purpose of this policy, I could get behind it. But the purpose of this policy is to prioritize the principle of educational equity. That's very nebulous, and I don't trust it. I don't. So that, for me, is a hang-up. And that was the hang-up originally. It's still the hang-up. So may I take a stab at another purpose?
Sure.
Because I'm trying to reconcile the purpose of educational equity with the purpose of diversity and inclusion. They seem to be different. They're different. And if you read the policy that is in front of us, read the purpose. There's actually no mention of diversity and inclusion in that purpose. It's all about equity. So here's a proposed new purpose. The purpose of this policy is to reinforce the board's commitment to the PIne-Richland School District mission, and then finish that sentence.
Sean, can you
To
scroll,
foster-
please, or whoever has thank you.
To foster a respectful learning environment free of harassment and
The other way.
discrimination for every student.
Sorry, Mark.
But you're eliminating.
I just want the community.
So let me say that again. So this is actually one of our stated objectives. It's a cultural objective, to raise awareness, right? So again, purpose of the policy is to foster a respectful learning environment free of harassment and discrimination for every student. That's a pretty noble purpose.
Don't we already have a policy to have an environment free of harassment?
We do, it's 103.
Sorry,
Well,
we have a
I mean,
non-discrimination policy.
you could get into the policy 103, which has some language like that, Christina. But I could argue that This policy, though, specifically addresses more cultural aspects of our organization, right? Which we would attempt to make it feel a bit more inclusive, right? Whether it's someone bullying white, it doesn't matter. We do have a cultural problem here of not everyone feeling welcome here. So to me, that's a totally different thing than educational equity. Two different, I mean, I'm really trying to, I said it at the beginning and I still mean it. Like, I'm trying to find language here that I can support. When it includes equity, I'm sorry guys, I just can't. It's a totally different objective in my opinion. And the fact that, with all due respect, when you tell me the government's behind an audit, sorry, when the Department of Ed's behind it, I question motive.
So, Mark, last week you sat on a government body. We're a government, right? You realize that we are.
Doesn't mean that but it doesn't mean that we can't question, right? I'm just saying the
And
audit.
and
like,
you sat here
to
and
not be able to give
suggested that you
evidence,
wouldn't
to not
let
be able to give
people.
evidence-
You wouldn't let people.
Hold on, Carla.
No, I was speaking first.
Carla was replying, Mark, just real quick.
So you sat here. You won't trust the government,
That's exactly right. I don't trust the government.
and you sat here as an elected official. You are an elected official who does not trust the government, but yet you sat here last week, and I quote, "I don't think we should allow people to read emails," unquote. So now you're the government taking away people's freedom of speech. So don't talk to me about government, Mark.
You know what, Carla? Get off your
look,
high
let's-
horse. Don't
yeah.
take that out of context. You totally took that out of
Yeah,
context.
let's try to keep this as civil as
Every
possible.
time you speak, I feel like I'm being lectured to.
Yeah. Mark, on your point, and I'm looking at this diagram here, and I might not be completely right on this, and this is something that Peter had mentioned. I don't even know which meeting this was. This was maybe August or September of last year. That maybe this policy that we're discussing ends up in 103, like a subset, if you will. And as I hear your purpose, right, and I look at 103, and then you have 103.1, which is non-discrimination, qualified students with disabilities, right? I'm sorry?
And 104.
And 104, yes, yeah. But specifically on 103, on kind of the 103 kind of talks about the, again, everything in that diagram that's in the gray, if you will. 103.1, and it may not pick them all up, but it seems to pick up a lot of that for students with disabilities. Not necessarily all, but some of it. It almost sounds to me, and I might be off, where you're going with your purpose idea would almost land in, let's take 103, and where there may be some shortcomings of 103, we have a 103.2, right? And it's just a suggestion where it starts out with a purpose very similar to what you're talking about. That's kind of what I see 103.1 doing for students.
Yeah, so it is very, so I understand what you're saying, and I guess in the spirit of what Dr. Miller just said, 103 still, though, is disciplinary, right, versus proactive and preventive, right? So we could have a policy that is more geared towards being proactive and preventing the need for 103. Like, I could see that, right, and I could have that kind of conversation. There's, you would do different things in a proactive way, right, to teach and educate about differences and about the need to create an inclusive environment without having to discipline anyone for violating, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I don't read 103.1 as the disciplinary part, though. That's what I'm saying. 103, disciplinary,
That's what I'm
right?
talking
Mm-hmm.
103.1 isn't really disciplinary. It kind of talks about that next phase, and I don't think it goes maybe quite as far as some people want. But I think it might be an in-between of where we might get to.
Well, but that's where I think our conversation should go.
Right.
I mean, that's where it is a very worthwhile purpose, but it's a different purpose than educational equity. It just is.
But I do want to go back, Mark, back to your purpose, because I think that's important for us to go back to the focus, where you were saying respectful learning environments free of, and even putting in, you said harassment, but what if it was first discrimination and listing like race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and harassment of any student? And I don't know, we would have to wordsmith and go through it, but I do think the purpose, us doing an audit is important, the professional development, and then I don't know if we want to continue to just go through it, go through the current 832 and what other revisions do we want to make?
I kind of think it's a kind of a big job to do this many revisions. Like, we've kind of agreed on a few things here, and I feel like that's a good starting point for us, and maybe, see where we are. I just don't know if we could sit and go line by line. I don't know how, how feasible that is to do all of that. But like I said, the purpose sounded good. Some things we talked about here that we all kind of agree on, and then we can kind of see where we are from that, if that makes sense, instead of.
I would echo Amy. I think we're making substantial gains and we're finding grounds that we agree on, and keeping the students in focus while doing it. I think it would be hard right now to do that, but I'm pleased with the progress and the ability of this board to find.
An agreement on language itself,
Yes.
actually. Very important.